Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VEASAN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. And Michael, we are down to 4 teams, and we will get to the conference championship previews and all that stuff coming up here. But first, we got to start with the ankle that has been heard around the world. Everybody's watching to see what's going on with Patrick Mahomes ahead of this week's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. He practiced in full on Wednesday. I didn't expect that. I thought he was going to be maybe limited at best. But what do you make of what we're seeing now as everyone's kind of going all Zapruder film with the press conference walk-off and him jogging on the practice field?
Yeah. Well, there's no umbrella, man. We know that. And nobody's heard shots from the grassy knoll. You know, we haven't seen that yet. I mean, look, I went back and I went back. I watched the Jacksonville game where he got the ankle, and then I watched the next game against the Raiders where, you know, how he played in that game, which was magnificent. I mean, I think it was 28-10 route. You know, Andy Reid called 44 passes in the game, knowing that his guy allegedly had a high ankle sprain. I don't know if you do that if you have a high ankle sprain, but he did. You know, and the guy throws for 443 yards. So I don't know how to quantify it. I don't know if he's a bionic man. Here's what I do know: a lot of guys in the league, and I know a few players have done this during the season. They fly to Germany or they fly to Canada, and they get treatment because there's treatments outside this country that are not approved by the FDA that helps them in some situations. Don't ask me what they are. I don't know. I know one player flew to Germany on a Tuesday day off, got treatment, and came back. Wow. So, like, I don't know how this is all working. I don't know how it all goes together. But I know that it's seriously, you know, watching him yesterday, he looked a little ginger to me, but I'm assuming, as I wrote about, he's going to be fine. What I think is interesting, because of all this kind of detective work, I went back and watched the championship game, and we'll break the game down later, but I think this is an important note. I think what was really overlooked in the championship game, Femi, and if you go back and watch it, there's the beginning of the fourth quarter, right? You know, we had the play where he throws the ball in the first half with 5 seconds to go. He throws it out in the flat to Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill makes the catch, and they lose the chance at the field goal. They struggle in the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter, at the 3rd and 3 in the fourth quarter, he gets hit by Hendrickson and Hill, and I think he got concussed. Nobody's going to say this is true, but from that moment forward in the game, he is 5 for 9 for 38 yards. 5 for 9 for 38 yards. He gets sacked 3 times. He fumbles on one of the sacks. Remember, the 3rd and 9 from the 9, which was started at the 5, he got sacked on the play before for 4-yard loss. Yeah. Then he gets sacked again. He fumbles. Tooney recovers it, or else they don't even tie the game, right? Yeah. So he gets sacked 3 times. He runs twice in that situation, but he runs out of bounds, which stops the clock and allows Cincinnati a little bit more time if they actually scored the touchdown. He throws and he throws the interception. Like, I don't think he was healthy in that game. I think from the fourth quarter on, my belief, because he threw 3 passes in the overtime that I've never seen him throw before. Like, it was far and above what it was. Now, was it that hit? Was it another hit? I don't know, but it looked like that. So how he play? I think he plays with the ankle. Yeah. Do I think he could play if he's concussed? I think ultimately no, but I think that's irrelevant. I think he's going to play, and I think if you're Cincinnati, you can't even talk about it. Like, I don't even want to hear about it. He's healthy. He's going to go.
To your point, he looked like a completely different quarterback in that fourth quarter and overtime of last year's AFC Championship game. And guys have had bad games and all that stuff. Like, it's expected every now and then. But for Mahomes, compared to his typical standard, he was well below that in the fourth quarter and overtime, and they ended up losing that game 27-24. I mean, the drive in OT, because I think people forget that the Chiefs got the ball first, and all the complaining about the whole overtime rules and all this stuff. It's like Kansas City got the ball first in that overtime, and Mahomes was just dreadful on that first series. Eventually throws the interception.
But he was dreadful in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
I mean, he was dreadful in the fourth quarter. He's got a first and goal. Remember, in that fourth quarter when they get the ball back down 24-21. Right? He starts that drive off, And basically, he throws 5-yard pass, a 5-yard pass. He throws an 8-yard pass. The biggest play of that drive was he threw about a 4-yard pass to Kelsey in the seam, and Kelsey ran for 18 yards. They basically ran the ball in that drive. Like, there was something wrong with them in that drive. Like, they knew it. They got 1st and goal at the 5. They ran that inside shuttle pass on 3rd and 2 that Kelsey barely got the first down on, remember? Mm-hmm. And then they had 1st and goal at the 5. They run it with McKinnon. He doesn't get it. On 2nd down, he's scrambling around again. And typically he makes plays when he's doing this. He doesn't get it. So it's 2nd down, he gets sacked for 9-yard loss. So now it's 3rd and 9 from the 9, and he goes back again. They rush 3, and he gets sacked again and fumbles, and they kick the extra point. Then he throws 3 incompletions. To me, like, I don't care what anybody tells me. I watched that game again this morning, and I think he got concussed on that. I really do.
And on that 3rd down that you're talking about,
I don't think he would ever admit that.
No, he can't.
I don't think he would ever admit that.
Yeah, he can't, because the league would investigate the organization and all that stuff. There's no way you can admit that. But with that 3rd down play that you're talking about, 3rd and goal, I mean, he held the ball for forever. If I remember correctly, like, he was just dancing around back there, 3-man rush, and then eventually gets sacked and fumbles the football. So it just looked horrendous from what he was doing.
And you would have thought he would have thrown it out of bounds, and then he fumbles. I mean, I don't think his mind was working like we know his mind works when he's healthy. That's all I'm saying. I mean, because he played uncharacteristically in the 4th quarter that entire game. I don't think he's going to play. Now, I do think this ankle is going to, if I'm Zach Taylor, here's what I'm telling the team. I don't want, on Tuesday morning, on Wednesday morning staff team meeting, I'm saying, I don't want to hear a fucking word about the ankle. I don't want to hear anybody talking about it. I don't want to hear anything about it. He's healthy. He's 1,000% healthy. Our game plan is going to be all about they're healthy and we're healthy and we're going to go play. Period. End of story. Because it don't give anybody an excuse or a letdown. Believe he's healthy. But here's what I will say. The way that Kansas City has protected against Cincinnati in the 3 games, it hasn't been great. And the edges of Cincinnati have won against the tackles of Kansas City. So if he isn't 100% with the ankle in terms of quickness and plant off of it, we'll know quickly.
Not to make you a doctor or anything, none of us are experts in that field. What percent do you think he's at? I mean, he's practiced in full. Obviously, he was hobbling on Saturday.
I can't even imagine it. Like, if he has a high ankle, like, high ankles are 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how he's doing this. Then he didn't have a high. Like, I don't know. I'll ask you. When Pollard got hurt, I thought Pollard's hit was less than Mahomes' hit.
I mean, it looked like
just
a high ankle
visually.
on Pollard. Yeah, like it was. I mean, it was a classic, like, guy pulls him down and then has, like, the weight underneath of his legs there for Pollard. And right as it happened, I was like, damn, I think that's the dreaded high ankle. Apparently, it's even worse for Pollard since he has the fractured fibula.
Yeah, I mean, it was worse, right? It was the fibula, right?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, for the YouTube audience, we're watching the practice footage there that was shared all around the world. I think every single person in the Kansas City media was taking footage of Mahomes at practice, as they should, since that's the most important storyline with this story. Yeah, and they knew it. Yeah,
and they knew it. You know. And obviously, I don't know. They're not gonna give him a painkiller to practice with. I don't think.
No, I doubt that.
You know, and so he went out there with it. So, I mean, my sense of it is look. I think handicapping this game, he's healthy. Period. End of story. Just handicap it that way. Pick your winner based on strength versus strength, based on the previous 3 games, based on breaking down those games, based on Cincinnati's offense, Kansas City's, all those factors. Don't worry, and don't handicap the ankle.
Mahomes, so he was practicing in full, and for those who don't know the different variations in the practice report, when a guy gets injured, you have to put them on the practice report the next week. They're leading up to the game. There's did not participate, I should say, limited participation, and then full participation. Mahomes was listed as a full participant, and what that means is a player is 100% and able to do 100% of a player's normal repetitions. In general, this category should be used for players who missed or could not complete the prior game due to injury, but have returned to participate fully in practice the following week. It should also be used for a player who sustained an injury in the prior game that affects his performance, but was able to finish the game and participates fully in practice the following week. as in the example on page 2. So that is from the NFL's injury report policy from back in 2017. So Mahomes, while he might not be 100%, he did take part in 100% of the normal allotment of reps. Now, I suggested maybe he did it at half speed. like he could do those reps at half speed and be a full participant technically,
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, I think it's look, I just going to assume he's healthy. I'm not going to argue with it. I don't know how it happens. I really don't, but I think he's healthy.
Maybe Mahomes has Wolverine blood. Who knows? Who knows what's going on? And
he must. I mean, or he went to go get treatment in Canada. I mean, get a private plane, take off, and go to Canada, get treatment, come back. I don't know what they do. Big Daddy thinks they're rubbing CDB oil over it. I mean, I know he's got a medical degree. Big Daddy's the only human being on planet Earth, right? Think about this. Big Daddy's the only human being on planet Earth that can run the Packers. He can run the Knicks, and he has 2 children. One of his oldest daughter, Alyssa, she's got, not only does she have a doctorate, she's got a PhD. His second son, his first son, Nick, is an emergency room attendant, graduated number 1 in his class at Temple. Brilliant kid. Wow. Brilliant, right? And he's running a hospital emergency room in Pittsburgh, and yet when it comes to prescriptions, Big Daddy thinks he has the answers. Now, he's got 2 of these people in his family, but he thinks he could do it. So Big Daddy thinks they're going to rub CDB oil all over it.
Well, they must have learned it from him, The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Obviously. Obviously. I mean, I don't know how the hell God knows what they would have done without him. I mean, who knows?
Big Daddy, the knowing all. We absolutely
He's back from Hawaii now.
Oh, he's back?
Hold on. Hold your asses. I mean, he's back from Hawaii. LaFleur could be in trouble right now. He's going to start getting, he'll start getting it.
I hope Hawaii treated him well as he was able to get away from the Packers and all this stuff going.
Yeah, I bet he was probably having gummies per day, a gummy a day. I bet he was having.
Well, maybe that's why he knows all about the CBD oils.
Exactly.
Speaking of vacation, I don't know what Tom Brady's been up to. I don't think he's been on vacation. He's been on his podcast, the Let's Go podcast. And here's what Brady had to say when Jim Gray, the co-host of his podcast, asked him about his future and when he might make a decision on when he returns to football.
Tom, you're leaving everybody guessing. You've said you'll take your time. Do you have any type of a timetable as to what you might want to do regarding your football career?
Jim, if I knew what I was going to fucking do, I'd have already done it. Okay? I'm taking it a day at a time.
I love it.
I sense you're antagonized by the question.
You're scratching.
It's only the question scratchy. That everybody wants to hear.
You're scratchy. Scratchy. I appreciate your asking. Thank you.
I can tell.
You think you appreciated him asking? It's the question that everyone's going to ask, and kudos to Jim Gray for asking him, because if you're talking to Tom Brady, why wouldn't you ask when he's going to make his decision there? But do you think this ends up going into February or March, or when do you think Brady ultimately decides on if he wants to come back to football, and if he does decide to come back to football, where he's going to play in 2023?
I don't know. I mean, he's on his own timetable. I think he's probably got to clear his head. I mean, look, he's gone through a traumatic season on the field and off the field. I don't know if anybody can really speak to how long it takes for you to figure out, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? I think it's all going to come down to get away, kind of take a reflection and go from there. I think he's right. I think when he's decided, he'll decide. But for the most part, I think he should probably worry about his personal life now that he has some time to do that before he jumps back into whatever he wants to do, whether it's come work at Fox or whether it's keep playing.
And we talked about it all throughout the season. When you watched Brady, it didn't look like his skills had diminished. Like his arm was still alive. He was still accurate when he had time in the pocket. So this is just going to come down, which is crazy to say because he's 46 years old, but he's still playing at a pretty high level. It's going to come down to whether he just wants to do it and he finds a situation, I think most importantly, that he feels comfortable in and can at least thrive in that system.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the other thing. He hasn't lost his courage. Most quarterbacks lose their courage. They lower their eyes. They kind of worry about it. He hasn't. So, do I think he has 3 good years? No. Do I think he could play another year? I think it's year to year. And I think that's because it's year to year, he's going to take as much time as he needs. I would think so.
Well, the Indianapolis Colts here, Michael, are taking as much time as they need to fill their vacant head coaching position. It was the interim head coach, Jeff Saturday, applied for the job, and he's done one, and he's done 2 interviews, I should say, for this head coaching position. Of course, because why not? He completed that second interview with Irsay and the brass there, and I just find it hard to believe that they're going to hire him, but that's what all the tea leaves are saying.
Hire him.
And
I think they're going to hire him.
And your boy, or over at the 4-letter network, Tanner Orlovsky put out this tweet. And this tweet to me, I think is
Let me hear it.
This is creme de la creme right here. He said, tons of good candidates, but I know some facts from when he took over as head coach, meaning Jeff Saturday. Rushing yards per game went from 30th to 12th. Rushing yards per attempt, 30th to 10th. Pass protection, 29th to 11th. +5 in points per game. Led 3 games at the half. Led 5 games after the first quarter. Not saying no-brainer, but did some good stuff in a tough spot, Michael.
Oh, I think it's perfect. I think he should take over as the OC. I think it's perfect. I mean, if he thinks these stats are important, then God bless him. I mean, how do you have credibility when you think those stats are important? He got his ass kicked. He's in over his head. If you can't see that as a commentator, then you don't know what you're looking at. I mean, you really don't. I mean, if you just want to shill for the guy, then go ahead and shill for him. But like, first quarter matters. I mean, I see a lot of bad teams lead after the first quarter. Football's a 4-quarter sport, you know. Pass protection, 29th. Maybe they got rid of the ball quicker. Did they? At the end of the day, we're measured on how did we play and did we win? And they weren't close in a lot of games. I mean, the Giants, as bad as the Giants are, destroyed them. I mean, he's better off tweeting, look, until they get a quarterback, I don't know if you could evaluate any head coach in Indianapolis. Probably would be a good tweet. Be a hell of a lot better than that. I don't know what shit he's looking at. But then again, every time he talks, I have no idea what he's looking at. He and I watch a completely different game. I'm not saying I'm right and he's wrong. I'm just saying he watches a different game than I'm watching. Like, I'm trained a certain way. I don't know what his training is other than just saying shit. But what he sees and what I see, completely 2 different games.
You know, my favorite part of the tweet is the not saying no-brainer, but did some good stuff in the tough. Then what are you saying? Like, what are you saying?
What are you saying? You're shilling for your guy.
Either say you think he should get the job or don't say anything at all.
Just say you want to be the quarterback coach. Just basically say, I want to be the quarterback coach, so I hope he gets the job. Now, what happens if Saturday in the Park gets the job and don't hire this guy? Like, seriously, hey, Big Dan, why aren't you have a job here?
Just saying. You know, just saying.
Just saying. Just say it. I mean, come on, man.
Is there any way that it's not Saturday as the head coach for the Colts?
I can't imagine. I really can't imagine that. Elliot just texted us. The New York Football Jets have hired Nathaniel Hackett as their offensive coordinator per a source.
I just saw that report from Tom Pelissero.
You go first. You go first.
I mean,
you go first.
Is this another coup to lure Aaron Rodgers? Because we know that Hackett, and everyone's making the connections of Hackett got the job in Denver.
Head went on that. Yeah. I like where you went on that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because everyone says Hackett got the job in Denver because Denver wanted to lure Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay. Rodgers signs back with Green Bay. Then Hackett's like, well, we have Hackett, I guess. Or that's what Denver said. Now you see the New York Jets, who people are starting to be kicking around some things that would Rodgers want to go to the Meadowlands? Well, maybe you bring his buddy, who Rodgers speaks highly of, in Nathaniel Hackett, to go ahead and be the OC. That's where my brain immediately goes because it's not anything he does schematically that's going to wow me.
Right, he's a day one West Coast offensive coach. I've said it all along, right? I've said it all along. And so, you know, I mean, I think that's the case. And look, if that's going to, you know, I mean, obviously Robert saw something in that Denver offense that he liked. I think your point's well taken. You know, look, let's face it. I mean, as the play caller and the head coach, maybe the job was too big for Nathaniel. You know, when he was in Jacksonville, he had that one season with Blake Bortles where they were really good, but midway through the next season, he got fired. So, and then he went to Green Bay, and we know, according to Big Daddy, that LaFuck runs everything up there. So, you know, I mean, I don't know. You know, I think this is going to be, you know, 1 + 1 is going to equal 2. You know, and the Jets seem to be advertising that they'll trade as many draft picks as they can to get the guy.
Well, we know that they're probably going to move on from Zach Wilson, the guy they selected with the number 2 overall pick.
They say they're not. They say they're not. I mean,
okay, they can say whatever they want.
If you bring Rodgers in, right? You have him let Rodgers teach him for a year. Maybe Rodgers.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Rodgers and Wilson are close. I mean, it sounds like Rodgers has kind of been a mentor for Zach Wilson. Now, I don't know how that's going to hold up if Rodgers joins the team and see that. But, hey, Joe Namath said that Rodgers can unretire the number 12 there for the New York Jets if he wants to come on down and wear gang green. We'll see if that happens. But Hackett going to the Jets to be their offensive coordinator, per sources, that according to Tom Pelissero over at the NFL Network. But the Jets aren't the only AFC East team that has a new OC.
I think the bigger hire is going to be there at the – I think the bigger hire at the Jets is going to be who do they hire for their offensive line job. See, we all get caught up in the who's the coordinator, right?
Yep.
Well, look, Kyle has the let's go through the final 4 teams, right? Every one of these final 4 teams have really good offensive and defensive line coaches. I mean, Frank Pollock's done a wonderful job with Cincinnati when some of these backups are playing. So, I think that, and look, Philly's line coach, you can't, there's no way you can get him. He won't ever get out. He's been there through the administrations and he's going to stay.
Yeah, it's Jeff Stoutland, I believe, is the.
And then, Stoutland, his name is, right? And then, the line coach, Chris Forrester, he's always been the Shanahan's line coach. And he went through that personal problem down in Miami and they brought him out there as a consultant. They let John Benton go back with Salai, so they could make Forrester the line coach. So that's there, and so I think when you break down these teams, that's the key. And so who's going to be the line coach? Because that's what the Jets need, is to get that offensive line to play at a higher level. They need the quarterback to play at a higher level, but they need that other one too.
Well, ESPN's Adam Schefter just reported that it'll be former Titans offensive line coach Keith Carter who will be the Jets O-line coach and run game coordinator, per sources. Does that name do anything for you?
Well, there you go. So you're going to take the outside zone. That's what they want to run, and that's what Nathaniel wanted to run in Denver. You take the outside zone, which they run in Tennessee. You take the run game off of his plate, and now he just throws runs. So it's a West Coast offense with outside zone. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get some element of the West Coast. So there you go.
If they don't get Rodgers, do you think that this still works here for the New York Jets with Hackett? No.
No.
That was quick.
No. Look, Nathaniel did a wonderful job with Blake Bortles, but I'm not. That's going to be hard with this guy. And all the conversation about does he work hard, does he not work hard? I don't know if he misses meetings or not. I think evaluate the performance on the field.
Yeah.
Does he play smart? Does he look like he's studied the team? Does he look detailed? No. At some point, if you're prepared, you understand the game. So don't tell me, he works hard when you watch the tape and he doesn't.
Yeah, just from a fundamental standpoint, everything just looks so sloppy. The footwork is atrocious, and it's just nothing ever looks the same down in and down out, which tells you that he's not really paying attention to the details there. So we wish Zach all the best of luck out there in the Meadowlands, but maybe they get the 4-time MVP Aaron Rodgers and they can reunite with his buddy Nathaniel Hackett there. I'm sure they'll be excited about that because that's a team. If you give them a quarterback, they got some good skill position guys to throw to. So maybe the Jets can get off the ground. They
did in Denver too. They had good skill guys in Denver too.
Yeah, they did.
Look, Denver's offense was every bit as talented as this Jet offense, but they couldn't score because they got to get the quarterback.
Yeah, well, maybe Rodgers. Hopefully, he's got a little juice left in the tank there. He played all right this past season, I would say. The Jets aren't the only AFC East team that has a new offensive coordinator. Your old stomping grounds, New England Patriots. Bill Belichick has hired his old buddy, Bill O'Brien, who recently was the offensive coordinator for Alabama the past couple of seasons here. But this is what we've talked about in terms of alignment and New England going back to the well with a guy that already understands what goes on in that building and how they see the game of football. What do you make of Bill O'Brien now going back to Foxborough?
I think it's, when I was working at CBS, Femi, I was, I got fired from the Eagles after the draft, after we drafted Trey Thomas, Jeremiah Trotter, Allen Rossum, Ike Reese, a bunch of guys that went on. Brandon Whiting, I got fired after that draft for Tom Modrak. He came in as the GM and fired me. So I'm out of work. And CBS is just getting football back. So somebody tells me you should go talk to CBS. Maybe they'll hire you as like an insider. You can do that. There were no jobs in the league, really. So they hire me as an insider. I'm not supposed to be on the air. And so I'm feeding George Seifert, Brent Jones, and Marcus Allen, along with Jim Nantz. Those 4 people are on the set. And I'm feeding them information about what's going on in the league, talking to different people, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. So, George is just a really good guy, but he's not a TV personality. So about midway through the year, they put me on the air. They make me the insider. And then they turn around, and George is kind of really bored, and he's going to get the Carolina job, so he leaves, and then they put me on the desk. So I went from being nothing, never done TV before, to doing that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I can remember this. This is how it pertains to what we're talking about. So Nance tells me this. He says, look, I don't want to burst your bubble, but following George, no matter what you do, is going to look really good. And so following Matt and Joe Judge, whatever Billy O'Brien's do is going to look pretty good. Okay? I will take the same advice Nance gave me and apply it here. I mean, Billy's a professional. Billy's done this before. Billy knows how to do it, It's
going to be Bill Walsh's offense.
I mean, it's going to look – the players – here's what happens for any young coach listening to this podcast. God. When players ask you for an answer to a question and you don't provide it, you've lost the player. You've lost the player. I mean, Joe Judge is sitting there as the head coach of the New York Football Giants, and he didn't have an answer. I mean, if you're Joe Judge and you're watching the Giants win 9 games, win a playoff game with essentially the same roster, okay? Yeah. Essentially the same. Okay, Evan Neal's not the right tackle, but – the line's playing at a higher level. The quarterback played at a higher level. Everybody did, right? You got to take responsibility for that, right? You got to say, hey, I didn't do a good job. Because when the players went to you for an answer, they didn't have it. It's the same thing here. Like, the only way you get better as a coach is to accept responsibility. Like, and people say, well, you're really hard on coaches. I'm just being honest. I'm not being hard. Like, you got to accept responsibility. Matt Patricia's got to accept responsibility. Like, it wasn't like whenever I give a talk, I always talk about the Ohio State-Michigan game being sold out in the year 2050. Not because the kids are going to play in the game aren't even born yet. It's the uniforms they go to see. Like, don't make yourself bigger than what you are. That's what kills people. It's the Charlie Munger theory. When if you have 110 IQ and you act like you got 150, you're impossible. But if you have 110 IQ and act like you got an 80, you're going to be really great. And sometimes I think these coaches, when Joe took this, I think that's kind of the mindset. And I think that, look, this is the move they had to make. I mean, I've been saying it was as obvious. There's no way you can watch New England tape and say that was a well-constructed offense. You can blame Mac Jones, and I think that's fair. He certainly deserves some of the blame. But fundamentally, if you believe what I believe, which is players, coaches, and scheme, the coaching and scheme wasn't good enough. Now, who they hire as the line coach, I think, is going to be another critical hire.
It's something that's so true that you mentioned with the players. If you ask them the questions and you don't have the answers, you lose them. Because players, they talk about it all the time, and you'll hear these guys as analysts discuss it. They say, we can see through when the coach doesn't know what the hell they're doing. Like we can easily see through that because they know what it's supposed to look like. And if it doesn't look like something else, it's clear that it's like, all right, we're screwed. we have a guy that's clueless because we know the scheme more than he does. Now all right. Oh, sorry. I wanted to ask you.
So let me explain that to you.
Yeah, explain it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. Well,
you asked me the question. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask you, though, because I'm sure there are some of the detractors out there that'll be like, well, here comes Belichick hiring another person from the New England scheme here and not really going outside for ideas. Do you put any stock into, all right, maybe this has kind of gotten a little stale, or is this really just that it needs to be this sort of a fit for them to have success?
I think what they'll do is figure out what they have. I think that there's certain coaches that are the great Bill Berman was telling me this the other day. He listened to our pod on Monday, and he's like, you know what it's like? He said it's like chefs and cooks, right? Mm-hmm. Certain guys are chefs, certain guys are cooks, right? And the cook can prepare the meal. The chef knows based on the recipe and has to do it that way. The chef, you can give him anything, and he can make something really good. I mean, Artie Bucco was a chef. Remember that scene where he's got, well, you didn't get to this episode, but he's got the shit kicked out of him by Benny, and he's got his arm in a brace because Benny put his hand in the tomato sauce, and he's making rabbit based on what he has in the kitchen. He's a chef. I mean, they can create something from what they have in the kitchen. Same thing with coaches. That's ultimately the way that you become a good coach is, what do I have? How do I make this work? And I think that's what Billy will do when he gets there, and it'll be kind of tied together. It'll be will it be elite? I don't know. I don't think Alabama's offense was elite, but it's going to be better than what they had. And if the line coach is better and Billy's better, they're going to be better. There's no denying it. They're going to be no better. And so, but what happens is when you steal plays, when you sit there and borrow a play from a team, and you don't understand when the play breaks down what you need to do to fix the play, right? When you don't understand that, and then the players say, well, what happened? And you don't have an answer, you lose them. So Walsh hated play stealers. He hated it because he said that's why you can't steal the play. Because if you don't understand how the play breaks down, you're not going to be able to give the answer to the players.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that everything looks good on a chalkboard, but if you don't actually understand the concept behind the why and all that stuff, then it can easily come back.
The methodology is critical.
Yeah.
You got to understand the methodology. You got to understand it. You got to know it. And if you don't, you look like the fool. And so you've got to be able to give answers. Like, I think that's going to be the big thing about the NFC Championship game is who's going to have answers.
It's a clear upgrade, in my opinion, there, going from O'Brien to what they had last year with Joe Judge and the crew calling those plays.
Jim Nantz quote.
Yes.
See Jim Nantz quote to Michael Lombardi.
That's an excellent story, by the way.
I learned so much on that show. I can remember one time I'm sitting there doing a segment, and I'm sitting there doing it, and I'm talking about all the GMs shuffling around in the NFL, and Nance grabs my arm, and I'll never forget it. Greatest advice I ever got in my life. He grabs my arm and says, Michael, let me tell you something. This shit is really, really important to you, and you love it, and I understand why. But the little old lady who's sitting in Des Moines, Iowa, watching the game and watching this show, she cares about three things: who the coach is, and who the quarterback is, and can her team win. She could give a shit about the GM. And she's right. And he's right. And ever since that day in 1998, when he told me that story, I've always believed the GM needs to stay in the background.
That's excellent advice. The great Jim Nantz, who will be on the call for the AFC Championship game.
The wordsmith.
He most definitely
Hello, friends.
is. Hello, friends. Golf season's back up and running, too. We'll get Nance every weekend now, here on out. Michael, let's take our first break. On this other side, we'll do some exit interviews for the teams that got bounced out in the divisional round. All right, let's do some exit interviews. 4 teams exited stage left in the divisional round: the Bills, Cowboys, Giants, and the Jaguars. Let's start with Buffalo. Super Bowl expectations. They were the favorite for much of the year. Another disappointing season as it ends in the divisional round.
Yeah, I think Buffalo had the greatest thing ever happen to them. They got the shit kicked out of them. They got humiliated on their own field. And through humiliation comes reason. Churchill said this, and I believe it. When all through the 40s, when he was sitting in Chartwell building those brick walls around his house, and if you ever go to England, you need to go to Chartwell and see his house. It's incredible. But he builds all these brick walls. It was his hobby. He painted and he built brick walls. And he wrote every week or two about the perils of Hitler in Germany and what was going on in the 30s. All through the late 30s, he's writing, and he saw the danger in Germany. And when he finally got elected in office, he said, fear does the work of reason. Fear does the work of reason. And the Bills just got fear put in their face. So now there's going to be a good chance to reason with them. And so now Brendan can sit there and say, yeah, look, I know we got a quarterback, and we're the only team that besides Kansas City that's in the Final Four that paid their quarterback, and we haven't gotten there. So we're going to have to figure out, we got a quarterback, we've paid him, and we're limited to the cap. We're going to have to figure out how we do this, how we're going to player develop. But we got to be able to, A, adjust our scheme so we get bigger on defense, B, find younger talent in the defensive front. We got to find a blue chip defensive line. We got to find one. And it wasn't Ed Oliver the other day, and it's not the two kids we drafted, Rosario and Boogie Basham from not those guys. We got to keep finding guys. And that's how we're going to get this better. And then number 3, I think we really got to sit Josh Allen down and say, okay, we got to run an offense that takes some of this loose play skill off your plate that we can actually operate with. And that starts with building a better offensive line. I mean, Roger Saffold, I haven't thought was a very good player for a while, but everybody keeps signing him. I don't know why. Deion Dawkins, is a good player. Is he an elite player? I mean, he might go to the Pro Bowl. I don't really give a shit. The right side of the line, I mean, I think it starts up front.
Yeah. It's just taking a little bit off the plate of Josh Allen, I think, is how you go about this offseason if you're the Buffalo Bills. How about the Dallas Cowboys? I have 2 questions for you, Michael, and the Dallas Cowboys. The first one, can we put to bed all the Mike McCarthy head coach stuff and all that stuff? Like, he's going to be the guy. And then the second one, can the Cowboys win with McCarthy and Dak Prescott as the head coach and quarterback? Can they win big?
I think what they have to do is I think there's a feeling I have that I know Kellen Moore's up for the head coaching job in Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It's him, Frank Wright, or Steve Wilks. And I think, but maybe by the time we're done this pod, they may make an announcement. I think it's down to Wilks and Reich. I heard Reich is the leader right now. I don't know. It's kind of hearsay, so you got to be careful. But I think that McCarthy would rather have Brian Schottenheimer calling the game.
Really?
I think he'd rather have Brian Schottenheimer call. It's closer to his than it is Kellen Moore. I think 5 coaches are off the staff. I mean, if the offensive line coach, Joe Philbin's gone, Skip Pete's gone. I mean, they fired they didn't renew a bunch of coaches' contracts.
Yeah.
So and some of those guys were McCarthy guys too now. I mean, Philbin's a McCarthy guy. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. To me, I think if you're a Dallas fan, as you are, and John Goulet and Dave Ross and every Bill Berman, I think the reality of it is look, this is going to be Tony Pollard's team. And we've got to be able to build a team around Pollard. Again, we gave Dak all this money, but we're going to have to find young talent because we paid him. He's not going to take a pay cut. But we can't win if we're devoting all the cap to a guy that makes too many mistakes. And there's a reason he makes too many mistakes. Kellen Moore doesn't get blamed for his mistakes, and the coach does have to assume some responsibility when the quarterback makes too many mistakes. You got to know what the quarterback's good at doing and what he's not. So I think that's the way to go. I think their window is tight. They're going to have to pay Mekhi Parsons, right?
Yeah.
Their window is tight, and they're going to have to make the run now. And I think they're going to have to make it. They got to re-sign Pollard. They're going to get rid of Zeke. They got to redefine their team, redefine their scheme.
Yeah, or at least bring Zeke back on a much cheaper deal. They can't have him be on the cap hit that he's currently at because that's not conducive to team building.
They're not going to. He's coming back cheap. I mean,
yeah.
I think
he wants to be
that's
there
what
too.
the cap forces you to do. The cap forces you to make hard decisions. But I think they want Brian Schottenheimer to be the. I really do. If I can't prove this, I just all hearsay. But I think that's what they want.
If Kellen Moore doesn't get a head coaching job, do you think they would still make a change at OC?
I kind of get this. I mean, I think McCarthy wants Schottenheimer. I think that's kind of like to me, it's like I think that's the case.
Yeah, because
I think to me, look, my problem with Kellen Moore is simply this: is he doesn't incorporate the game like we talked about. 3:08 to go in the game. You start the drive 1st and 10. You can't punt. Not because analytics says you can't punt. You can't punt because they got the best inside the 20 kicker. The guy's got 32 kicks inside the 20. The Eagles only have 17 as a team. So if we get this ball back with no timeouts left, we are going to have it at the 10-yard line, the 5-yard line. What's the odds of us doing that, scoring 95 yards versus going for it on 4th and 10. But we shouldn't have to go for it on 4th and 10 because McCarthy should have said to the coach, look, we got to get a first down here. We're not punting. Let's get a first down. Let's call something. We get 4 yards so we're not in the 4th and 10.
Yeah, it's going to be a really, really interesting development if they were to make a change at OC there. Schottenheimer has been like an analyst consultant on the staff here this past season. Hasn't really been calling anything. So if they make that move, that'll definitely raise some eyebrows in the Metroplex. How about the New York Giants? The Giants we saw Saturday night, big gap in the talent. How do they kind of shorten that gap here and then compete a little bit going in the 2023 season?
I think if you're the Giants, you got to understand how are we so bad? And what do we have to do to avoid becoming bad again?
Yeah.
And I think if you're the Giants, you have to be really careful to guard against the bias that permeates through their organization, which is we drafted them, we love them. Mm-hmm. The sunk cost fallacy. I think they've got to be really careful. Do I think they should sign Daniel Jones back? Yeah, I do. Would I sign Daniel Jones at a certain number? Yeah, and I would be a hard ass about the number. Because I think if you look around the league, as good as Josh Allen is, they can't get to where they go because they're paying him too much money. Dak Prescott, they can't get to where they're going. The Eagles are paying Jalen Hurts no money, and they built the team around a quarterback on a rookie deal, right? Mm-hmm. Your team that you built around the quarterback on the rookie deal sucks. You could play the Eagles 10 times, you're going to lose by 10 times. It's a fact. That game wasn't close. The game in the Meadowlands wasn't close. The only game that was close was the game that screwed me up was the game at the end of the year when Davis Webb played, where the Eagles had a win, but they really, they kind of tiptoed around it. So for me, the Giants, if I'm John Mara running the team or Joe Sheehan and all those guys, Brian Daboll, I'm saying, look, we have to do a better job evaluating our own roster, and we've got to put the right value on our players. If the Giants were in the home lending business, they would have been in foreclosure because they extend loans to players well and above. The Giants the reason they went 5 years without winning is because they paid good players like great players. Mm-hmm. You could never overpay a great player. When you overpay a good player is when you get in trouble. And to me, the Giants have to say, we won with Joe Judge's roster because the coaching was really good. Mike Kafka, the line coach, Brian Daboll, Don Martin, everybody. We won because of that. If we don't improve our talent level, next year we'll be 6-10. We'll be 6-11 if we don't, because we're going to play a harder schedule. People know how we're playing. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to change how we play. Yeah, we'll add a better player here and there, but it isn't going to offset who we really are.
And we'll see if they can keep that coaching staff together. Mike Kafka and Wink Martindale both getting head coaching interviews. We'll see if those guys remain in the Meadowlands. Finally, the Jacksonville Jaguars, a hell of a second half of the season there as they win the AFC South. Now building on Trevor Lawrence heading into year 3. How do they kind of take that next step up and try to join the Cincinnatis, the Kansas Cities, and the Buffaloes of the world?
Well, first of all, if I were Doug Peterson, I would have Jim Collins come in and talk to the team. Who wrote the author of Good to Great. Mm-hmm. I would pay whatever it took to get him to come in there, and he would be the first guy that would talk to the team and understand exactly what it's all about, how you make that leap. Because what often happens is companies that go from shitty to good, they think the next step is easy. It's like lifting weights, right?
Yeah.
You bench press 275 pounds, and then one day you get to 300, and you're like, okay, now I'm getting to 350, and all of a sudden, well, wait a minute, it's hard. Mm-hmm. It's going to take a little bit more time. You're going to have to keep going through it, right? Yeah. Hit that plateau, right? And so, Good to Great kind of covers that, and so, and I think he really has to do a good job of understanding what we need, how we have to play to win, and then just keep adding players that fit. I think adding Ridley was a great trade. If they get him in, get another receiver, keep rebuilding the lines, get better on defense, but they have to maintain that hunger. I thought what Trevor Lawrence did was incredible, shaking hands with the players coming off the field. They're going to need that leadership, and they're going to need that competitive stamina that they're going to have to be ingrained into these players, that we haven't done shit. We haven't done shit. Like, we got to get to great. We're just good. We got to go further.
It's not going to be easy either because, you have Mike Vrabel and that Tennessee team. They're going to rebuild and try to get back to it. And then who knows what Houston does. Maybe they get a quarterback, and it's one of these quarterbacks ends up popping and being a really good player. So they're going to have those teams gunning for them there in that AFC South. All right, let's take another break here, and we'll watch the tape on the other side talking Bengals defense and our buddy Lou Anarumo. All right, let's continue our Watch the Tape segment here with the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And a lot of talk about this Bengals defense is about the defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, and some of the adjustments that he makes throughout the game to trip up these elite quarterbacks here. And when you put on the film, Michael, what is it that makes his Bengals defense hard to play?
Well, I think he does a really good job of adjusting the game plan out. I think he basically allows you to kind of have first and second down. He's not going to give up a big play. You can run the ball on him on first and second down. He's not going to give you a big play. He's going to play his cover 2 stuff. He's not going to engage in a man-to-man, but he's going to try to get his ends to win the game, right? Hendrickson, he's going to have to get Hubbard, those guys to win the game. I mean, they're a size speed team all the way. And then when third down gets involved, then they try to play some man-to-man with their blitzes, and then they attack your protections really well. But they do a good job of condensing the game, and they do a really good job of trying to take away your strengths as it goes along, as the game is going along. And ultimately, I think their defensive front is the key to what he's been able to do. So I think they're not complicated by no means. They're not like, oh, my God, what is he doing? They're smart. They basically take the approach, look, we're not giving you a big play. We're going to play a lot better in the red zone against the Chiefs. So the first game in the first game in 2004 in 2021, week 17, they allowed 3 for 4 in the red zone. The game in the playoff, they were 3 for 5. And then last year they were 3 for 4. They don't shut you down. They take away. Now one of those drives in the red zone that they didn't score on was the throw over to Tyreek Hill. And then the other one that didn't count because they gave up the ball on this one, right? So that's a turnover at the end of the half. But the other one was the ball got tipped. I mean, Kelsey's wide open, the ball gets tipped. I just think he's patient. I think his patience is, look, I'm going to make a play. I'm going to keep pressuring you and see how long you will. And I think he feels like Andy isn't going to keep running the ball. So he's going to keep playing cover 2 safety. He's going to play cover 4, cover 2. He's going to let him have some runs. And he's going to allow his tackles, and I think his tackles, Reeder and Hill, have played really well. This front has played very good against Kansas City's offensive line. The ends have played really good against the tackles, and Reeder and Hill have played good against the guards. Tooney didn't play in the game this year. He was hurt. But he played in the championship game last year, so they're going to need him in there. But they do a good job of rushing, and they do a good job of containing the quarterback. And they have mental toughness. I mean, they didn't blink. First and goal with the 5 in the championship game, they didn't blink.
Yeah, that's the remarkable part because I thought they were about to get ran out of the building based on how that game was going.
And he plays nickel. He plays nickel all the time. He understands, right? He understands that Kelsey's a receiver. Like he doesn't even pretend to believe. He knows Kelsey's a receiver. So when they're in 13, which is 1 back, 3 tight ends, right? He knows that's really. That's Kelsey's a receiver. So he's in nickel the whole game. He doesn't get out of nickel. And he'll give you the runs. He's going to give you some runs. But he's saying to himself, we're going to play better situational football than you are.
It's funny. He was on your boy's show, Pat McAfee's show, earlier this week, and McAfee was asking him about the ring around the rosy play that the Chiefs did against the Raiders in the final game of the regular season. And he said, hey, what are you going to do if the Chiefs go ahead and do that in this game? He says, I don't give it, to paraphrase, it was pretty much, I don't give a damn what they're going to do. We're going to make sure we cover Travis Kelce. Like that's first
right.
and foremost. Like they can do all the eye candy and all this stuff or whatever, ring around the rosy and whatever they want to do. But we're going to make sure we know where 87 is, and we're going to go ahead and cover him because that's the guy that can kill us.
Right, and last year in the championship game, he had to deal with Tyreek Hill. So he was double. Whenever time he played one rat, he went to double. He left Kelsey alone. He left Kelsey 1-on-1. Now he's got a double. Now he can double Kelsey. And so it's a real problem. I mean, and he's really good in game, and I think he's a really good chess player. He doesn't panic. And he doesn't get caught up. Oh, I gotta have to give up. And they don't give up very many big plays. I mean, that's the other thing. When you play cover 2, when you play in that quarter, when you got a split safety, you're encouraging the team to run. You're encouraging them to run. You're saying, okay, you got a 7-man front. We're not 2-gapping, so you're a gap short. Run it. And the Chiefs kind of get bored, and he knows the Chiefs will get bored of running it, so he's trying to wear them out and patient. And then he knows the key plays that Kansas City want to run when they need a play. It's going to Kelsey. It's going to sprint right out. I mean, for all the window dressing of Kansas City and that huge play sheet they're all looking at it, you kind of know where it's all going to go when it matters.
Yeah, it's going right to 87. That's their guy there. Why do you think that he's not getting head coaching interviews here? Like what's going? Because everyone keeps talking about that this week. It's like, hey, Lou Anarumo's been awesome the past couple of seasons, but nobody wants to interview him. None of the owners are looking for Lou Anarumo. Why do you think that he's being overlooked there for head coaching positions?
I just think, to me, he doesn't fit the profile, right? I mean, he's not the offensive coach. I don't even know how. Let me look how old Lou is. I mean,
does he need a new haircut? Like, what's going on here? Like, what do we?
I mean, we'll get Barbershop over there to cut his hair if we had to. Barbershop can't wait to get a pair of scissors in his hand. I mean, he was born in '66. I mean, he's only, what is he? He's only like 53 years old.
Yeah,
I mean, right?
56 years old.
56 years old.
Yeah.
But, he's kind of a guy that, I mean, he was the interim defensive coordinator in Miami in 15. I mean, look, the guy's a Long Island guy, went to Wagner. Probably, I think I might have played against him in college. I mean, come to think of it now.
Hell yeah. That's all. We got to get that tape. We'll dissect that during the offseason.
No, I think he graduated. He's older. I mean, there's no way I could have, because I'm 63, so I'm a full class ahead of him. So no, but I mean, I'm old, but I think the guy doesn't come with any fanfare. All he is just a really good. He's like, to me, he reminds me of Chuck Noll. Nobody really knows who he is. He just does a hell of a job.
Yeah, the owners, I guess, they don't want to peek peek underneath the hood to find out what he's doing in some of these games to get this defense to play so well. But hey, he's doing a hell of a job.
I mean, he was on the Giants coaching staff. He was on the Giants coaching staff. I wonder, give Zach Taylor credit for finding him. He was on the Giants coaching staff.
Yeah.
Right? And at 18, and then he hired him as the DC. Nobody knew who he was.
You know what? Because looking at Lou Anarumo's background, he was because wasn't Zach Taylor in Miami as well? Maybe they might have crossed over.
Maybe that's where they crossed paths.
So, yep, that's exactly it. Because, Zach Taylor was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for the Dolphins in 2015. And then Lou Anarumo was in Miami from 2012 to 2017. He was the interim DC in 2015, but he was mainly the defensive backs coach. So, they had some crossover from their days in Miami. So that's how he was able to find out that, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. Nobody's getting him for a DC. Let me go ahead and hire him. And it's a home run hire for Zach Taylor. And I'm sure he's thrilled that none of these owners want to interview him to be a head coach, because that probably means another year with him.
In week 17, when they had 9, the one thing is that the Bengals do a good job of controlling the football. So week 7, Anarumo holds them to 3 points in the second half. 2021, they scored 3 points in the second half. This year, they only had 8 possessions in the whole game this year, the game they played. They only had 8 possessions. They scored 13 points. So in 3 games, he's held them to 19 points in the second half.
That's pretty damn good, man. That's pretty damn good. We're going to take our final break. On the other side, we'll get to who's going to win on Conference Championship Sunday here when we return on the GM Shuffle. All right, it's moment of truth time now. We've got to talk conference championship games, and it starts in Philadelphia. I'm sure the folks out where you are at, Michael, are absolutely excited to see this Eagle. Have they greased the poles? Have you walked outside? Are the poles being greased?
They're greased.
Okay,
they're ready to go.
They're greased. They're ready to go.
They're ready to go.
I'm sure the Niners will be ready to go as well as they head into the city of brotherly love to take on the Eagles. Philadelphia, at our show sponsor, DraftKings, 2.5-point favorites, total sitting at 46.5 here. This is the matchup we've talked about all season long of these two teams. If they were to play each other, it would be an absolute war in the trenches, and now we get it on Sunday. How do you see it playing out?
It's funny. These two teams are so much alike, style different, but so much alike. Their offense fuels their defense. When you look at the Eagles, in the terms of what they've been able to do, how they've outscored people in the second, and really, it's the second and the third quarter. The Eagles, I think, have a plus 100 and something point differential. Both teams have to play from in front. They want to play from in front. They're such in a hurry to get the lead. And as simple as it sounds, is whoever can achieve that, is going to make it harder for the other team. I think it's going to be hard for San Francisco, because if Philly does And alters, if you're going to play Kyle Shanahan, you can't show him the tape of what you've done pretty much. You're going to have to modify and alter what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Change your front. Change your coverages a little bit. Don't let him lock himself in. Do what Dan Quinn did. Get him a little bit off balance and play the shit out of first and second down runs. Play the shit out of first and second down runs. Get him into 3rd and 10. Force them to become a drop-back team. Because that's when Brock Purdy will now have to participate in the game. The whole goal is, how do we make Brock Purdy participate? He hasn't had to. They played from in front. They've been able to dominate from in front. So, to me, I think because of that, I think the matchup favors Philly slightly because they can be a little bit unpredictable with their scheme. San Francisco's not going to be unpredictable with their scheme. Philadelphia's going to know what they do. Now, in fairness to San Francisco's scheme, if you go back and watch the game, so if you're DeMeco Ryans, you've watched the Bear game in Week 15 a lot because they run the offense that you're running, okay? They kind of run that a little bit. They run that wide 9, kind of get up the field. You're watching the Colt. You're watching that offense. The Colts held them to 17 points. They gave up 141 yards rushing in the game. So if you're doing that, and if you watch in Tennessee to see how they're going to attack you in the passing game. So to me, you're going to combination of those 3 games. It doesn't do you any good to watch New Orleans because that was Gardner Minshew. It doesn't do you any good to watch Dallas. That's Gardner Minshew. So you got to pick out the games where you run a scheme that's similar to what they do. And then you've got to watch the teams that played really good against them. Arizona in Week 5 held them to 20 points. And then you've got to craft your game plan against them. This game's going to come down to which offensive line can pass protect the best in a drop-back game. I think that's Philly.
And that's where I think the game will be won and lost there. And I think the weakest of the trenches, if you put the offensive line for the Eagles and the offensive line for the Niners and the defensive line for both teams, those 4 combinations, I think that Niners offensive line is the weakest of that bunch. And not to say that they're bad, but it's just the other 3 are really good.
They're only weak when they have to go to drop back.
Yeah.
They're only weak when they're a drop back pass team. They're not weak when they can run their outside zone and they can do that. And this will be a big game for Jonathan Gannon. How he adjusts this game, how he handles it. I think he's going to get the Texans job, actually. So I think this will be if you're Nick Caserio, this is a really good opportunity to watch how he adjusts it, how he handles it, how he handles Kyle, and then the in-game stuff, how that all kind of plays. Because Kyle's going to work on certain things that he thinks he knows he can get him in. And if he changes and alters the front a little bit, or he plays a double reduced front that he's, or how he wants to take away the run, I think that's going to be the key. And then the whole goal for Philly is we got to make Purdy play from behind. We got to make Purdy have to be down 10 in the 4th quarter, make him drop back, and then see if this line can hold up. If you're San Francisco, you're saying we got to play from in front. We got to control the pace of the game. We got to convert every 3rd down and short that we can, and we got to be great in the red zone, and we got to limit them to 25, 26 minutes with the football.
Now, the Niners' run defense is elite. With the front that they have, Warner's flying around the field, Greenlaw's really fast. Can they slow down this Philly rushing attack? And if they do slow it down, Philly's passing game, where are you at with this team against this Niners secondary?
I think Philly comes out and throws it. I think that's where you got to take advantage of San Francisco. Look, San Francisco's the best tackling team defensively in the league.
Yeah,
they don't give you yards after contact. They're really good, right? They don't give you yards after contact. They can one-on-one tackle in space. They're really good. And they're big enough inside, right? I've said all year, the San Francisco defense has the formula to attack Philadelphia. They're big inside with Armstead and Kinlaw. They can hold up in the run game with the 3 inside, and they can set the edge from the outside with all that outside passing game. I think this is going to be a game where Philadelphia takes the same approach they did against Tennessee. We're going to throw this thing early to get the lead. We're going to come out and try to make some plays in the passing game. We're going to run a lot of play action in the first quarter to try to get this lead. Our goal is to score twice in the first quarter, to take what Seattle did and score. We watched Seattle do it. We can do it. We're going to throw this thing, and we're going to run Hurts a little bit, but we're going to really try to do our damage with running and yards after the catch. Goddard, A.J. Brown, Waddle. Smith, I mean.
Who wins the game?
I'm leaning towards Philly. I really am. I think Philly I think Philly's just has a little bit more diversity within. I think it's a great game. It's 1 versus 1s, right? I mean, How do you not like it? The line will never get to 3. Nobody's going to give you a field goal in the game. I think Philly will. I think if Philly can can make Purdy have to – at some point, Purdy's going to have to participate in the game, right? At some point, he's going to have to participate in the game. You know, I mean, John Hussey's the referee in the game. 69-55 for the home team.
For whatever it's worth. John Hussey, we'll see you out there, man. I agree with you. I think Philly wins the game. I bet Philly on the money line Sunday night right after the Niners beat the Cowboys, and it was not out of some sort of vengeful spite for San Francisco. I think Philly should be favored close to a field goal in this game, and I think the home field advantage is going to play a factor. The link is not an easy place to play, and now you're asking a rookie quarterback to go in there in the biggest game of the season. And all season long, we've been flying the Eagles flag here. I mean, back in May, we said that the Eagles, to win the division, to win the NFC, to win the Super Bowl potentially, these things were all on the table because they have the best roster in football. I think that shines through Sunday afternoon. I think the Eagles punch their ticket to the Super Bowl and will be the representative from the NFC. So the second game, Bengals and the Chiefs. We talked a lot about this game, the Mahomes ankle, the Lou Anarumo factor with the Bengals defense here. How do you see this one playing out? The Chiefs, Michael, have now flipped back to being the favorite. So they were the underdog for a little bit, went to 2.5. Now they're a 1-point favorite, the total 47.5.
But we knew this coming in, right? We knew this coming in because we felt like, look, it was going to be always about what Mahomes did. I wrote about this during the week, right? It was about what was Mahomes going to look like when push comes to shove, right? So, and I think that's what once they saw, the betting public saw that Mahomes was healthy, I think that's what we're going to get. To me, you know, I think Kansas City has no one to blame losing to Cincinnati but themselves. You know, I think it's going to be a really close game, but I think they have no one to blame because they tend to stall out. I think, look, Cincinnati can be really dangerous because they have what really drives Kansas City crazy is they have receivers on the outside that can win.
Yeah.
And Cincinnati and Kansas City is going to play their if they play their two shell, play zone, and force Zach Taylor to run the ball, I think that becomes problematic for them. So I like Kansas. I think Kansas City. I think Kansas City's just. But there's that Burrow magic that you just kind of you want to avoid. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I'm going to favor that. I mean, to me, I like the two home teams. I know that doesn't really always – usually there's one road team that wins. But for me, I like the two home teams here.
This is such a tough game to pick, I think. I mean, because you mentioned it. You have the Burrow magic on the other side, and then you have the best quarterback in the league who has some magic in his own right in Patrick Mahomes. So you don't want to pick against either guy. and here we are. It's funny. I saw some of the Cincinnati Bengals guys. I guess they've been calling it Burrowhead Stadium since the Burrow and the Bengals have had so much success against Kansas City. And I best believe that's made its way back to that Chiefs locker room, I think. I think those guys are going to be highly motivated. They know that this is the team that's been the bugaboo the last 3 times that they've faced them. I think they want to show Cincinnati that they are the best team in the AFC. If you made me pick it, I think I would actually lean towards Kansas City as well. And I've been skeptical of Kansas City all season long, but I think this is a good spot for them here.
I think this, though, when you look at Kansas City, they're in the top 14 category. My 19 categories, they're in the top 14. So is Cincinnati. Man, it's a really even game. It's a really even game. I think it's a money line play on the game, to be honest with you. I don't really think the game's going to matter in terms of what the cover. I think whatever team you think can win, and it's hard to go against Burrow. Let's be honest, right?
Yes.
It's hard to go against Burrow. I mean, Burrow's really good. And so – you know, and he has a way of making plays. And if Mixon runs the ball, see, the other thing they do a great job of not allowing Kansas City to have more than 9 possessions in the game. Kansas City ran, in the game in Cincinnati this year, they only ran 54 plays. In the playoff game, they only ran 67 plays. That included the 3 in overtime. In 2021, when they beat them in Cincinnati, they only ran 58 plays. They always seem to – and the game this year – Cincinnati won the game because their offense controlled the game. They were able to control the game. So I think, to me, that's what I see as the difference. I do. I mean, I think it's going to be a great game. I think both games are going to be great. I really do.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun watching these games. Noon is when the game starts between the Niners and the Eagles. That's noon West Coast time. I'm sorry, I'm West Coast biased. So 3 o'clock for you out there on the East Coast, and it's 6:30 Eastern time for the Chiefs and the Bengals, 3:30 out here in Las Vegas. I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but I do think we get Eagles-Chiefs in the Super Bowl. As much as I've doubted Kansas City, I think that they've been the team, and things have broken right for them. And Mahomes, I mean, you can only bet against him for so many times. Like this guy is unreal, and he's maybe a little bit compromised with that high ankle sprain. Maybe it's not as bad of an injury we all thought, but that guy he's the real deal. And I think he adds to his legacy, I think.
I think the difference in both games is if San Francisco falls behind, they won't win. If Philly falls behind, they have a chance to win. Mm-hmm. If Cincinnati or Kansas City get a lead or fall behind, either way, both teams could come back.
Yep.
I think there's a style that San Francisco has to play to win the game. And so for me, because they're limited in that style, I think that makes them have to play. If they play that style, they'll win. If they're able to play that style, they'll win. But if they can't come back. They're not coming back 14 down. The other 3 teams, I think, could come back.
Well, the next time we talk, we will know what the Super Bowl matchup is, which will be February 12th in Glendale, Arizona. That'll be a lot of fun there. But that does it for this week's edition of the podcast. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Thank you to our producer, Elliot Bowman, on the ones and twos as always. Thank you to DraftKings and VSiN as well. And thank you to you, Michael. Have fun this weekend watching the games.
Thanks, Femi.
You know, make sure the people aren't too rowdy out there by the beach when the Eagles win. And I'll talk to you on Monday. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.